Welcome back, I'm Ryan from Blue Gaming, and damn am I late on this one. Like, I think everybody and their brother has talked about Spider-Man at this point, and really, I wouldn't be making this video if it wasn't for just, like, a few things. The big one being pretty much everybody that I've seen talk about Spider-Man so far has already been a fan of Spider-Man. And I gotta say, I'm not really, like, that big of a fan of Spider-Man. Like, I don't hate the character. I think that the strongest thing going for him is the eternal struggle of him being, like, doing everything right that he can, but still having so many things go wrong. And I like that in a character, but pretty much everything else surrounding Spider-Man that I like is, like, my favorite Marvel character in, like, throughout the entirety of Marvel ever is the symbiotes, and specifically, like, Venom and Toxin. And sadly, they don't make an appearance here. Like, they said that before the game even released, that these symbiotes would not be making an appearance in this version of Spider-Man, but I still decided to try it out because just the web swinging looks so fun. And so, yeah, I went into this not being really that big of a fan of Spider-Man, and I'm still, like, he's an okay character, but I'm not, like, a big fan of him now after playing this game. And I know that this game isn't to convert many people into being, like, huge fans of Spider-Man. There's just, like, too much here that is for the existing Spider-Man fans. Like, all of his alternate costumes, which all look amazing, pretty much all those are for the diehard Spider-Man fans, and pretty much the, like, casual Spider-Man fans are the ones complaining that there wasn't stuff like Venom or the more well-known characters that we've gotten in, like, the movies. Because it goes back to, like, a more traditional lineup of the Sinister Six, which also isn't really that big of a spoiler. But we're seeing a bit more traditional characters that we haven't really seen in the movies, which is kind of nice because that separates this game from, like, the movie universe, but it also adds in some cool other stuff. Like, we get to see characters like Miles Morales and Doc Ock before he becomes Doc Ock, and just other things like that that are kind of cool to see. And I'm saying all that because, as someone who's not a fan of Spider-Man and is really only a fan of things that aren't in this game, this is still one of my favorite games of this year. It's just that good of a game, and they've made playing as Spider-Man that much fun. Although, I don't know if that's more of just Insomniac being that good of game developers, because, honestly, this probably could have been any other superhero, and I would have been just as happy playing this game, because Insomniac just made an amazing open-world game. But there's one thing in particular that other superheroes don't have that Spider-Man does, that adds an extra twist that just makes it oh so much better, and that is the web swinging. The web swinging in this game is phenomenal. Like, I've played a little bit of Spider-Man 2, which is the game that everybody says is, like, the holy grail of Spider-Man web swinging. Played a little bit of that, and I think that the web swinging in this game might be better than the web swinging in Spider-Man 2. There's very little things that I can actually find wrong with the web swinging, and everything else besides that is just great. Like, by the time that I finished this game, I had about 95% of the achievements in this, and one of the few achievements that I had that I didn't have was the one to fast travel around the place, because I just kept web swinging everywhere because it is the best thing ever. Web swinging might be my favorite way to get around in any open world game ever, because they just made it so much fun. And something else that I really have to give props to him for is making stealth and just all-out attacks both super viable. You will see many times in the background footage that I take the more stealthy approach, because that's just the way that I do in these games. But then when you see me switch to the more like attack focused, I'm not at any sort of real disadvantage, and those parts that I took stealthily, I could have done those just attacking everybody and it would have worked out just fine. And on top of that, the visuals of fighting is just amazing. Like, I don't think that any other character ever has a fighting style that is anywhere similar to Peter Parker's, and so it's just really great to see it. Although actually inputting the different like buttons was really just almost streamlined, just an updated version of the Arkham combat that we've had for so many years, but it was made enjoyable again because of just the theatrics of watching Spider-Man fight. And so that was just the thing that pulled me through it, because it was just so fun to watch. And like I've said before, I'm more of a fan of the world around Spider-Man and the different characters around Spider-Man than I am of Spider-Man himself. And just seeing all the characters that they were able to add in from one place or another was just great. And from some of the stuff that they showed off towards the end of the game, which I'll talk about here in a minute, from stuff that they showed off there, the second one is just going to be even just that much more incredible because of the new characters that we are probably going to get in Spider-Man 2, whenever that happens to come out. But we do have 3 DLCs of Spider-Man to get through, and those are, like, we don't know anything about those, so we'll really have to see how those progress. But they have already said that those aren't progressing the story any, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But overall, just to end off kind of the positives before we get into some of the negatives, overall, as someone who didn't really like Spider-Man, this is such a good game that I almost completely platinumed it. When the DLCs come out, I'm probably going to finish up and get the Platinum Trophy on this game, and so that kind of says something if someone who doesn't like Spider-Man is putting that much time and effort into a Spider-Man game. It's just really that good. So now let's get to the things I didn't like about it, and this all culminates into a 15-minute period at the end of the game. It's all cutscenes at the end of the game, and it's just the final, like, 15 minutes of cutscenes. And huge spoiler warning, if you haven't finished the game, somehow, if you haven't played the game, stop watching, because I'm about to spoil all the end credit scenes, the after credit scenes, all of that is about to be spoiled, because this is really where I have my problem with it, so to speak. So literally, let's just go through these one by one in order of what they were shown, and I'll just talk about the different things that I either liked or didn't like about them. So let's start out with the first one. That's when Peter beats Doc Ock. Personally, I think that was a really great way to end off that character arc in one of the strongest character arcs that we've had this whole year. Just the relationship between Doc Ock and Peter Parker throughout the entire game, because really, it was kind of a thing out of left field when we found out that we were going to be working for him, and his slow-ish decline into becoming Doc Ock and how he transformed over the course of the game. And that was just a really great way to end that, with him just laying there crying out to Peter. The next one is another really great scene to end on. It's the death of Aunt May, and when she reveals that she knew that Peter was Spider-Man the whole time. Once again, really great way to end off a game. Like this, like thought that we were going to be saving Aunt May, but like I said earlier, the eternal struggle of Peter Parker is that no matter what he does right, he can do everything right that he possibly can, and bad things will still happen to him. And this just showed that off to like the maximum, and really great way to end off. And after that, it transitions through showing the whole city being saved by the vaccine that we were able to get, which showed the other side of Aunt May dying to make sure the city survives. And then we saw Aunt May's funeral, and that was all really, really great. And then starts going downhill from there, kind of. The next scene is Doc Ock being put into prison, and he just gets thrown into the raft, and then he makes a really angry face, and that was a really, like, why'd you put that there kind of moment. Kind of took me out of it a little bit, because we'd gone from those really great and touching moments to just, like, one that didn't really matter, and then we fast-forwarded 3 months, and we get another really great scene of MJ and Peter at the diner talking about just their future and everything. And that is it for the pre-credits ending scenes. And overall, I think that they should have ended right there, because everything that's coming up next is really what I have a problem with. Actually, I completely forgot about this next scene. It is the mid-credit scene, is the one where Miles Morales shows Peter that he got his powers, and I really wanted to see Miles Morales get his powers earlier in the game so that we could see a Miles Morales Spider-Man in this game, but I guess we'll just have to wait for either the next ones or potentially one of the DLCs. And then we finally get to the end credit, or the after credits scene, and it's the one with Norman walking into his secret lab in his apartment and going up to the kind of chamber with Harry in it and the symbiotes in there. And I knew that they were going to have to introduce the symbiote some way, but I don't know how I think about Harry Osborn having the symbiote, because I don't think that they're going to turn Harry Osborn into a good guy just because of the nature of the symbiote. At the very least, he's going to be an anti-hero. Like, he's still going to go after the same bad guy as Spider-Man, but they're not going to be teammates, just because that's how Venom works, and that's how the symbiote works. But I have a feeling that he's going to end up being a bad guy through some way. And I just think that this, like, end credit scene shouldn't have been in the game. Like, it should have been the beginning of the second Spider-Man game. And really, you can tell how good of a game this is if this is the thing that I'm saying is the worst part of the game. Like, I am really nitpicking here, but I just don't like cliffhangers like this. Huge personal preference. Like, I understand that, but I would have liked to see that at the beginning of the next game, or at the beginning of a DLC if it's addressed in said DLC. But I don't like having this thing right here and then cut off and then just sequel bait, pretty much. I just hate sequel bait, and this is the ultimate sequel bait, so that's really why I don't like this part. And overall, that's really all I have to add about Spider-Man. I just really, really loved it. I know that this is going to be on my top games of the year somewhere, even though I'm not a fan of Spider-Man, as I've said multiple times. The game is just that good. Granted, like I said before, Spider-Man could have really been replaced with most any other superhero, and I still would have liked it, and I still would have played it, but damn, does that web swinging add something that no other character can have. So, that is it for this. As always, I'm Ryan from Blue Woody Gaming, and I'll see you guys in next one.